Hi YouTube, my name is Jack, and today we are going to be talking about, we're going to be doing a product review, basically. So for those of you who are familiar with the YouTube channel but who don't really follow my blog, I do a lot of tarot deck reviews, and today we're going to be doing something similar. We're going to be doing it over here on YouTube instead of on the blog. And rather than a deck review, we're going to be talking about the Modern Witch Tarot Coloring Book by Lisa Sturl, who is the creator of, appropriately enough, the Modern Witch Tarot. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this deck, this is a deck that came out from Liminal 11, I want to say 2 years ago, a year or two ago. And it's a really beautiful little tarot deck. It's Rider-Waite style, so it's all of the cards are inspired by Rider-Waite-Smith imagery, but they're all sort of set in modern, present day settings. So the High Priestess has a laptop and so on. And if we skip past some of the major arcana, you can see there are skyscrapers in the Four of Wands, and just pick one or two more just to give you guys an idea. The costuming is all very modern. So we have a sweatshirt on the Four of Cups. And it's a really wonderful beginner's deck. This is one of the decks that I recommend the most to novice readers by default, because the symbolism is very comfortable and easy and approachable. This is perhaps the most famous card from the deck, is the Ten of Swords. And it's very familiar to anyone who reads a Rider-Waite style system, or to anyone who's using a tarot book that's based on Rider-Waite imagery. But it feels fresh and young. It's got a diversity of characters represented both in terms of ethnic backgrounds and body types. It incorporates a little bit of modern technology, and it just feels very, very approachable. So I have a review of that deck on my blog. I'll link it down in the description of this video if you're curious, and I'll also link to the Liminal 11 website where you can buy this deck if you haven't heard of it before and you see it and you fall in love with it. So the Modern Witch Tarot Coloring Book, which is what we're talking about today, is from Lisa Sturl, who's the artist behind the Modern Witch Tarot, and it's perhaps self-explanatory. It's a coloring book based on the card images that she has given in the Modern Witch Tarot. And I have to say, I'm really impressed with this book. Like sort of embarrassing to admit, but I'm more impressed with this book than I expected it to be. In part because I had expected it to be sort of a fairly thin book with just line drawings of the 78 cards and nothing else to it, right? Which would have been fine, right? Like by all means, having card images that you can fill in yourself as a meditative exercise. There's a lot there that would be worth doing, but I had expected it to be sort of very straightforward, very simple, not a lot going on with it, and I should have known better, because Liminal 11 is probably my favorite tarot production company right now. They pretty consistently produce very, very high quality decks and books, and they put a lot of thought and attention into the things they make. This book, as you can see, it's fairly thick. It has a really nice sort of sturdy cover to it, and it's just, like, setting aside the content, it's very high production value, which is consistently a hallmark with Liminal 11. But more than that, the book is actually sort of a lot more in-depth than I had expected it to be, and it's not just a coloring book with images of individual cards. It's also a really thoughtful and interactive tarot journal and companion book for the Modern Witch Tarot. So you have, drawings of individual cards, and with the minor arcana, that's kind of all that you get. But you also have, right at the beginning of the book, a pretty detailed description of Lisa Sturl's process in creating the deck, how she came up with the various color schemes that she assigns to the different cards. You see throughout the deck, there are a couple of colors that keep recurring. There's a mint green, there's a golden yellow, and there's a really sort of bright, vibrant red. And she talks about why she chose those colors, how she chose the coloring for the other major arcana that have sort of color schemes of their own, and then how she filled out the coloring of the deck to try to make it feel unified and cohesive, and what the different colors mean to her, and why she chose them. Um, which I think is just really interesting, right? That's a part of the process that we don't often get to see. But then beyond that, each of the major arcana has, in addition to this line drawing, has a whole section over here that talks about particular symbols that are included on the card and what those symbols mean. And then it has a sort of brief little white booky type description of the card down at the bottom, and how you would use it in a divinatory context. It also talks about sort of card connections, so other cards that are connected to this particular card by imagery, by color, and so on. And it's a really good sort of in-depth guidebook in a way that I really, really hadn't expected it to be. Uh, in a way, this is like the pictorial key to the modern witch tarot, right? Where it really is giving you a breakdown of all the major symbols that are involved in these cards, what they mean, why they were chosen, and how they relate to the meaning of the card. And I hadn't expected to see that out of this book. So that was really cool. That was really exciting. In addition to the coloring and the symbols, you also have a full page attached for each of the major arcana, which has sort of a special mandala that was designed specifically for that card, along with journaling prompts and reflections that have to do with the thematic content of that card. So, just as an example, we have, here, I'll flip back a little bit. The mandala for the death card has prompts such as, what part of yourself have you been keeping alive that you should let go? Have you ever experienced something that made you feel glad to be alive? Which of the people in the death card do you identify with, and why? And is there anything that you would leave everything behind for? So, look, I'm so bad at angling things. Okay, there you go. There's an image of the death mandala that you can color in for yourself, and then you have these journal prompts over on the side, along with little sort of visual tips. So, for example, in this deck, Death wears the same leather jacket as the Chariot, and is therefore the natural destination of the Chariot's ambitious charge forward. And here, I'll just pull those cards out of the deck here so that you can see what's going on here. And here's Death. So you have these two cards, and that little note of it being the same leather jacket is something that honestly I didn't pick up the first time that I looked through this deck. And I would never have considered that that was an intentional choice meant to connect those cards thematically that Sturl had put in there. And so that's, I think, the thing that I personally am appreciating most about this book, is just that it really does give you an opportunity to dive into her vision for the deck and the symbols that she chose very carefully that might look casual and accidental. So sort of another one here, we have, each tarot card is the sum of what's come before. The tower, excuse me, is the high priestess's veil, separating us from wisdom. The lightning is the energy called forth by the magician. The people remind us of the lovers. What else are these symbols repeated? So this is talking about the symbolism that we get in the tower card and how it harkens back to other cards that have already appeared in the deck. Aside from the major and minor arcana, there are also a couple of pages, here let's see if I can find one, that have just sort of general images that you can color in, that are obviously drawn from the symbolism of the tarot, but this isn't any one particular card. And then there are some brief descriptions of sort of the major arcana, the minor arcana, the role that they serve in the deck, and so on. So this is, in addition to being a coloring book, this is a really thoughtful companion book for the deck, which is something I hadn't realized going in, and I'm really glad that Lisa Sturl and Liminal 11 decided to make that choice. There's also a sort of recommended reading list at the back of the book for people who want to go further in sort of investigating tarot and learning more about tarot. So I think this is a really good resource, in particular for novice readers who have picked up the Modern Witch Tarot deck and who are looking for a way to meditate with it engage with the cards in a more personal way and really just do a deep dive into the symbolism of each individual card. Um, Obviously, this is not going to be as useful to anyone who doesn't work regularly with this deck, right? This is a coloring book that is very specifically designed to go hand in hand with the Modern Witch Tarot deck. And so I would only recommend it to people who have the deck and are actively working with it, because otherwise I think a lot of the symbolic deep dive is just not going to be as beneficial to you. That said, if you are just a colorer and you like to color and you have an interest in tarot, this would be a great book to pick up. There's sort of similarly, Teresa Reed has a book which is the Tarot Coloring Book, which is based on Rider-Waite symbolism. And that's another one. If you just like to color and you're looking for something tarot based to do that with, this would be another good example of a deck or a book that you can do that with. But if you're looking to use this as a tarot journal, as a companion book, I think it does really wonderfully serve both of those purposes, but only if you're using this particular deck. The one thing I will say, which is, a very minor criticism, is just that this doesn't fully work as a tarot journal because there's not room to record your own readings, to record spreads, to write your own reflections on sort of more detailed aspects of the minor arcana. And ultimately, I think that's quite okay, right? I think this book isn't meant to be all of those things. It is primarily a coloring book, secondarily a companion book, and tertiarily a tarot journal. And so, if you're trying to work with a tarot journal, if you're trying to keep a tarot journal, you're going to want to have a second journal sort of aside from this, where you can record your own readings, where you can write down your spreads and your various thoughts and reflections that go beyond just the short prompts that are given here. But that's okay. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's just sort of the one thing that as I'm flipping through this book, I noticed that there's an absence of that. And for people who are looking for a more rigidly structured, tarot journal experience, this might not tick all of those boxes. So on the whole, I'm really excited about this. It's been a long time since I've done something like coloring, right? That's a sort of creative enterprise that I don't get to do a lot. I have some colored pencils hiding in the house somewhere. I have to track them down. And I definitely will actually go through and color in this book because I think it's a really fun and engaging way to connect to the symbolism of the deck. And like I say, this is one of my favorite decks that have been published in recent years. It's certainly one of the decks that I recommend most wholeheartedly to new readers who are looking for something that's sort of comfortable and well within the bounds of tarot tradition, but that still innovates and brings a fresh perspective. I think this is one of the most beginner-friendly decks, and I think that this, as a companion book, pairs really well with it and is going to be particularly well suited to beginners who are trying to learn about the deck. So, thank you guys so much for watching today. I will put a link down below to where you can buy both the deck and the book, and yeah, I will talk to you sometime soon. Bye.